I stood in my kitchen that Tuesday morning, cracking eggs into the cast-iron skillet my late husband Frank had bought me 20 years ago. The aroma of coffee filled the air while I watched steam rise from the pan. This 3-bedroom house in suburban Denver had been our sanctuary since I purchased it 5 years ago after Frank's funeral. When my son Marcus and his wife Jessica moved in to help with expenses while saving for their own place, I thought we were building something beautiful together. But that morning, something felt different. Jessica's hostile glares across the breakfast table, her whispered phone calls behind closed doors, and Marcus avoiding my eyes completely. I believed family loyalty would see us through whatever storm was brewing. 20 minutes after Marcus left for his construction job, Jessica cornered me near the sink where I was washing dishes. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, and her blue eyes held a coldness I had never seen before. "We need to talk, Desiree," she said, crossing her arms. "This arrangement isn't working anymore." I dried my hands slowly, sensing the gravity in her tone. "What do you mean, sweetheart? You need to pack your things and leave today. My parents are moving in, and Marcus agrees we need space." Her voice carried no warmth, no regret. "You're too controlling, and frankly, we're tired of walking on eggshells around you." The coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the tile floor. "Excuse me? This is my house, Jessica. I bought it after Frank died." She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the kitchen walls. "Actually, that's where you're wrong." Before I could respond, a moving truck rumbled into my driveway. 2 people climbed out, a stocky man with graying hair and a woman wearing a floral dress. Jessica waved them toward the front door. "Mom, Dad, come on in," she called. "I told you the old woman would be clearing out today." Harold, Jessica's father, surveyed my living room with calculating eyes. "Nice place, Jess. Much better than that cramped apartment we were stuck in." Janet, her mother, immediately began examining my furniture. "We'll need to get rid of this outdated stuff. And these pictures," she said, picking up a framed photo of Frank and me on our wedding day, "they'll have to go." My chest tightened as I watched this stranger handle my most precious memory. "Put that down. You have no right to touch anything in my home." "Your home?" Harold snorted. Jessica explained everything. "You signed this place over to them as a wedding gift. Time to accept reality, lady." I ran to my bedroom and grabbed my cell phone with trembling fingers. Marcus answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom? What's wrong?" "Marcus, your wife just told me I have to move out so her parents can live here. Please tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." A long silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was weak, defeated. "Mom, I'm sorry. Jessica's right. We need our own space. It's just temporary until you find somewhere else." "Temporary? This is my house. I own it. Look, we'll talk tonight, okay? I have to get back to work." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my son's betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. Outside my bedroom window, I could hear Harold directing the movers, telling them where to put his recliner and Janet's china cabinet. I called my sister Betty in Colorado Springs, my voice breaking as I explained what was happening. "Pack a bag and come here immediately," Betty said. "Don't argue with them anymore. We'll figure this out." As I gathered my essentials, I could hear Janet in the kitchen, opening cabinets and declaring what needed to be thrown away. She had already tossed Frank's reading glasses and his favorite coffee mug into a garbage bag. Harold planted himself in Frank's chair and turned on the television. "Finally got ourselves a real home, Janet. No more living like refugees." When I emerged with my suitcase, Jessica stood by the front door, holding an official-looking document. "Before you go," she said, extending the papers toward me, "you should know this is an eviction notice. Everything here legally belongs to Marcus and me now. You can contest it if you want, but you'll lose." I took the document with shaking hands, scanning the legal terminology that made no sense. At the bottom was a signature that looked like mine, but felt foreign. "I never signed anything like this." Jessica's smile was cold and triumphant. "Memory plays tricks on people your age, Desiree. Maybe you forgot." I walked to my car with as much dignity as I could muster, but inside I was screaming. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Harold hanging a no solicitors sign on my front door. The man was making himself completely at home in the house Frank and I had loved for decades. Betty's house in Colorado Springs felt like a safe harbor after the storm I had just weathered. She poured me tea and examined the eviction notice with the sharp eyes of a retired English teacher. "This doesn't look right, Desiree. The language is too generic, and look at this address, they misspelled the street name. But my signature is on it." "Is it, though?" "Look closely." I studied the signature again. The D in Desiree was wrong, too loopy. Frank used to tease me about my angular handwriting, saying it looked like chicken scratch. This signature was too smooth, too practiced. "We need legal help," Betty said, reaching for her address book. "Thomas Wright handled real estate for the school district. He's retired now, but still takes cases for friends." Thomas Wright had the kind of weathered face that inspired confidence. His office smelled like old books and pipe tobacco. He studied the eviction notice through wire-rimmed glasses, making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This document is fraudulent," he said after 15 minutes of examination. "Whoever created this has no understanding of Colorado property law. Real evictions require court filings, notices to quit, and judicial oversight. This is worthless." Relief flooded through me. "So I can go home?" "Not so fast. Let me check the county records first." Thomas's fingers flew across his computer keyboard. His expression darkened as he read. "According to this, Jessica Lynn Morrison filed a quitclaim deed 6 months ago, transferring ownership from you to her and your son." My heart stopped. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." Thomas pulled up the digital document. There was my name in black and white, along with what appeared to be my signature. "When was the last time you remember signing any legal documents?" I thought carefully. "Not since Frank's funeral arrangements 5 years ago. This signature was supposedly notarized in March. Do you remember being at a notary's office?" "Never. I haven't left town since Christmas, and that was just to visit Betty." Thomas made more notes. "I need to investigate further, but this has all the hallmarks of identity theft and document forgery. In the meantime, don't contact Jessica or your son directly. We need to gather evidence first." Over the next 2 days, Thomas worked his magic. He discovered that Jessica had been intercepting my mail for months, including property tax bills and mortgage statements. She had convinced the post office that I was temporarily staying with Marcus and Jessica, so all mail should be forwarded to them. "She's been making mortgage payments from their joint account," Thomas explained during our second meeting, creating a paper trail to suggest ownership. "Very sophisticated for someone working in a dental office. How did she know enough to do this?" Thomas pulled out another folder. "I ran background checks on the whole family. Harold Morrison has a criminal record in California, elder abuse and financial exploitation of a previous landlord. Janet Morrison was terminated from a hotel job for accessing guest credit card information. Jessica learned from the best. The pieces started falling into place. They've done this before. Multiple times, according to California court records. They target older homeowners, usually through relationships with their children. The pattern is always the same: gain trust, forge documents, establish false ownership claims, then either sell quickly or claim adverse possession." Thomas showed me bank records he had subpoenaed. Jessica applied for a home equity loan last month using the forged quitclaim deed as collateral. The bank caught the discrepancy and denied the application, but she's clearly desperate for cash. I felt sick. And Marcus believes I gave them the house? From what I can tell, yes. Jessica has been very careful to make him think this was all your idea. She showed him falsified paperwork, suggesting you wanted to gift the property to ensure their financial security. My son thinks I lied to him? Thomas nodded grimly. She's manipulated everyone perfectly. But here's the interesting part. I pulled surveillance footage from First National Bank. Last Tuesday, a woman matching Jessica's description attempted to cash a check written from your account. When they asked for identification, she presented a fake ID with your name. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't impulsive greed, it was a calculated conspiracy months in the planning. "There's something else," Thomas said, his voice dropping. Harold and Janet Morrison were evicted from their apartment in Riverside, California, last month. They're not just greedy. They're desperate. People with nothing to lose are the most dangerous kind. Thomas's investigation over the following week revealed the true scope of Jessica's deception. We met in his office on a gray Thursday morning, and he spread files across his desk like a detective solving a murder case. "The Morrison family has been running property scams for over a decade," he began. "Harold served 18 months in California for defrauding an elderly widow out of her home. Janet was part of a document forgery ring that operated out of San Bernardino. They taught Jessica everything she knows. He showed me police reports and court documents. They prey on families with elderly homeowners, specifically targeting situations where adult children live with their parents." Jessica wasn't randomly attracted to Marcus. She researched him online, discovered he lived with his widowed mother, and pursued him deliberately. My stomach churned. My son was a mark? From day one. "Look at this." Thomas opened Jessica's social media profiles on his laptop. She joined a singles group that Marcus belonged to, started going to his gym, even got a job at the dental office near his construction sites. Everything was planned. The photos told a story I had been blind to see. Jessica's timeline showed her carefully inserting herself into Marcus's life, always smiling, always helpful, always playing the perfect girlfriend who just wanted family stability. "But there's more," Thomas continued. "I spoke with your neighbor Martha Williams yesterday. Jessica has been visiting her regularly, offering to help with financial paperwork. Martha signed several documents she didn't understand, thinking Jessica was just being neighborly. My blood ran cold. She's targeting Martha too? Attempting to. I contacted Martha's son Robert. He's a detective with Denver PD. He's been concerned about his mother's finances lately. Turns out Jessica convinced Martha to sign a power of attorney form, claiming it would help with Medicare paperwork." Thomas pulled out another file. Detective Williams ran a check on Harold. His fingerprints were found at 3 recent break-ins in the neighborhood. He's been casing houses while telling everyone he was just taking walks. The criminal conspiracy was vast and organized. While I had been worrying about family dinners and household harmony, the Morrison family had been systematically planning to steal everything I owned. "Yesterday, Marcus came to see me," Thomas said quietly. "He's starting to have doubts about Jessica's story. Some inconsistencies are becoming hard to ignore." Hope flickered in my chest. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Jessica told him you were moving voluntarily to a retirement community, but Marcus never saw any brochures or paperwork. She claimed you were excited about the transition, but Marcus knows you love that house too much to leave willingly. And there's something else." Thomas hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Jessica announced she's pregnant, says she's 3 months along. But Marcus mentioned she had been drinking wine at dinner just 2 weeks ago, and she's shown no symptoms of pregnancy. He's beginning to suspect the timing doesn't add up." I remembered Jessica's figure, still perfectly flat, no signs of the changes that come with pregnancy. "You think she's lying about the baby?" "I think she's using the pregnancy claim to pressure Marcus into staying quiet about his doubts. If he questions anything, she accuses him of not caring about his unborn child's future security." Thomas showed me more surveillance footage. "This is from the bank last Friday. Jessica attempted to open a safety deposit box using your forged identification. When they requested additional verification, she became agitated and left quickly. The woman in the grainy footage moved with nervous energy, constantly checking over her shoulder. This wasn't confident criminal behavior. This was desperation. Harold has been boasting to neighbors that he bought your house for a bargain price," Thomas continued. "He's telling people he plans to renovate and flip it for a quick profit. Janet has been measuring rooms and talking about which walls to knock down." The violation felt complete. These strangers weren't just stealing my home, they were planning to destroy everything Frank and I had built together. "There's one more thing," Thomas said, pulling out a final document. "Jessica scheduled a home appraisal for next Monday. She's contacted 3 different real estate agents about getting quick sale estimates. They're planning to sell your house and disappear with the proceeds." The timeline was accelerating. Whatever Jessica was planning, it was happening soon. "But we have options," Thomas assured me. "All the documentation proves your continued ownership. We can file for immediate injunctive relief and have them removed from the property. The question is whether you want to involve law enforcement immediately or take a more strategic approach." I thought about Marcus, manipulated and confused. I thought about Martha, trusting and vulnerable. I thought about other families the Morrisons might target if they weren't stopped completely. What would a strategic approach accomplish? Thomas smiled for the first time since I had met him. It would let them dig their hole even deeper while we gather enough evidence to put them away for a very long time. Sometimes patience serves justice better than speed. But my house will still be yours at the end. But Harold, Janet, and Jessica might finally face consequences for their crimes. The choice is yours, Desiree. I looked out Thomas's window at the mountains in the distance, thinking about Frank and the promises we had made to protect each other's dreams. Justice mattered more than convenience. Let's be strategic. Thomas's strategic plan unfolded over the next several days with military precision. We met early Monday morning in his office, and he outlined our approach while I took careful notes. First, we establish your legal position beyond any doubt, he explained. I've prepared all documentation proving continuous ownership and the fraudulent nature of Jessica's claims. Second, we set a trap that exposes the full scope of their criminal activity. Third, we ensure they face maximum consequences while protecting other potential victims. He handed me business cards. Patricia Mills is one of Denver's most respected real estate agents. She's agreed to help us create a scenario that will expose Jessica's plans while giving you genuine options for your property. Patricia Mills had the kind of professional confidence that came from decades of successful sales. Her office overlooked downtown Denver, and she treated our unusual situation with the seriousness it deserved. Thomas explained everything, she said, spreading property comparisons across her conference table. Your house is worth approximately $350,000 in today's market. It's a seller's paradise right now. Inventory is low and demand is high. She showed me listings for similar properties. I have a buyer lined up who would be perfect if you decide to sell legitimately. David and Sarah Chen are returning from military deployment in Germany. They need immediate housing for their family and can pay cash, but they want to move in within 2 weeks. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica was scrambling to find fake buyers while I had access to real ones. Here's what we'll do, Patricia continued. I'll contact Jessica directly, claiming I heard through neighborhood gossip that the house might be available. I'll schedule a showing for this weekend, right during the time Thomas discovered she's planned a housewarming party. Thomas nodded approvingly. Jessica's social media shows she invited the entire neighborhood to celebrate their new home on Saturday afternoon. She's posted photos of the house online, claiming it's been in Marcus's family for generations. The audacity was breathtaking. Jessica was rewriting history in real time, creating a narrative where she was the victim of an elderly woman's confusion rather than the perpetrator of elaborate fraud. Meanwhile, Thomas said, Detective Williams has been building a case against Harold. 3 more neighborhood break-ins have been linked to his fingerprints. He's been methodically robbing the same people Jessica has been befriending. I shook my head in amazement. They're running multiple scams simultaneously. Exactly. Janet has been collecting mail from unlocked boxes throughout the neighborhood. She tells people she's just being helpful, bringing packages to elderly residents who might not notice deliveries. In reality, she's gathering personal information for identity theft. Patricia pulled out a folder. I've also been in contact with David and Sarah Chen. They're prepared to make an immediate offer if you're interested in selling. They understand the unusual circumstances and are willing to participate in our weekend plan. The pieces were falling into place, but I still worried about Marcus. Has anyone spoken to my son? Thomas consulted his notes. Detective Williams approached Marcus at his job site Friday afternoon. He didn't reveal the investigation details, but he asked general questions about household finances and Jessica's behavior. Marcus admitted he's been confused about several things. Such as? Jessica's pregnancy symptoms don't match her claims about timing. She's been secretive about doctor visits and refuses to let Marcus accompany her to appointments. He's also noticed cash disappearing from their joint account with explanations that don't add up. Hope stirred in my chest. Marcus was questioning Jessica's stories, but he needed concrete proof to break free from her manipulation. There's something else, Thomas added. I hired a private investigator to monitor the house this weekend. Jessica has been meeting with multiple people, showing them through your property and accepting cash deposits. She's running a sales scam, taking money from several potential buyers with no intention of actually transferring ownership. The criminal behavior was escalating rapidly. Jessica wasn't just stealing my house, She was defrauding innocent families looking for homes. How many people has she taken money from? At least 3 that we know of. A young couple from Aurora gave her $5,000 as a good faith deposit. An elderly man from Lakewood paid her $8,000 for first right of refusal. A family from Westminster handed over $12,000 for what they thought was a down payment. $25,000 in stolen deposits, plus whatever she had taken from Marcus's savings. The scope of Jessica's theft was staggering. Saturday will be our moment, Patricia said. During her housewarming party, we'll arrive with David and Sarah Chen. All the legal documentation, Detective Williams with arrest warrants for Harold and Janet, and Thomas with paperwork to reclaim the property. Jessica will be surrounded by neighbors who believe her lies while we expose the truth in front of everyone. Thomas smiled grimly. Sometimes public shame is more effective than prison time, though in this case, she'll get both. I thought about the past 2 weeks of uncertainty and fear. Jessica had made me doubt my own memory, question my understanding of my son, and wonder if I was losing my mind. The time for patience was ending. What do I need to do? Patricia handed me a contract. David and Sarah Chen are making a formal offer on your property, $360,000, cash, closing within 1 week of acceptance. You don't have to accept it, but having a legitimate sale contract will demonstrate the difference between real business and Jessica's fraud. I looked at the offer, more money than Frank and I had ever dreamed our little house would be worth. The Chen family was offering me financial security and a chance for a fresh start, free from the memories of betrayal that now shadowed every room. If I sell, where will I go? That's entirely up to you, Thomas said. But Betty mentioned you've been considering a retirement community closer to her. This money would give you complete freedom to choose your future instead of having it chosen for you. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had power over my own destiny. Jessica thought she was manipulating a confused old woman, but she had underestimated the strength that comes from righteous anger and careful planning. Let's do this. The next morning brought unexpected help from the most surprising source. Marcus appeared on Betty's doorstep at 7 o'clock, his construction clothes dirty and his face etched with exhaustion. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice breaking. "I think I've made a terrible mistake." Betty welcomed him in and poured coffee while I studied my son's face. The cocky confidence Jessica had instilled in him was gone, replaced by confusion and guilt. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Marcus slumped in Betty's kitchen chair. "Everything Jessica told me about you signing over the house doesn't make sense. You would never do something that important without talking to me first. And the pregnancy." He stopped, running hands through his hair. "What about the pregnancy?" "I found a pregnancy test in our bathroom trash. It was negative, Mom. But she's been telling everyone she's 3 months along. When I asked her about it, she got furious and accused me of not trusting her." Betty and I exchanged glances. Thomas had been right about Jessica's desperation leading to careless mistakes. Marcus pulled out his phone. "Look at our bank statements. She's been transferring money to accounts I don't recognize." When I asked about it, she said it was for baby expenses, but we're talking about thousands of dollars. I scrolled through the transactions. Regular transfers to an account labeled H&J Morrison, H and under 7A, H&J Morrison, Harold and Janet's names. Jessica had been funneling Marcus's construction earnings directly to her parents. How much? $18,000 over 6 months. My entire savings from overtime work. Tears filled his eyes. "Mom, I think she's been lying to me about everything." "Including me?" Marcus nodded miserably. "She told me you were having memory problems, and that you signed the house over because you wanted to move to assisted living. But you've never shown any signs of confusion. You're sharper than most people half your age." I reached across the table and took his hands. "Marcus, Jessica, and her parents are criminals. They've done this to other families before. Thomas Wright is building a legal case against them right now." "Legal case?" Betty explained everything we had discovered while Marcus listened with growing horror. By the time she finished, he was pale and shaking. "I let them steal your house," he whispered. "I helped them do it." "You were manipulated by experts," I said gently. "But now you can help us stop them from hurting anyone else." Marcus straightened with new determination. "What do you need me to do?" I thought about the housewarming party Jessica had planned for Saturday. Can you get back into the house without raising suspicion? Jessica thinks I'm working overtime this weekend. She told me not to come home until Sunday because she's having family time with her parents. Betty smiled. Perfect. That gives us all day Saturday to execute our plan. Marcus pulled out his keys. I still have copies of everything. House keys, garage door opener, even the spare key to Jessica's car. What are you thinking? I explained Patricia's plan for the weekend confrontation. Marcus's face grew more determined with each detail. I want to be there, he said firmly. Jessica needs to see that I know the truth. And I want to apologize to you publicly for not believing you. You don't need to. Yes, I do. I chose her over you, Mom. I let her convince me that my own mother was lying. I need to make that right. Thomas arrived at Betty's house an hour later, bringing Detective Robert Williams with him. Robert had his mother's kind eyes, but carried himself with law enforcement authority. We've got enough evidence to arrest Harold and Janet immediately, Robert explained. But we want to wait until Saturday to maximize the impact. If we arrest them privately, Jessica might claim she was innocent of their crimes. But if we arrest them publicly during her fake housewarming party, everyone will see the whole family's involvement. He showed us photos from his surveillance. Harold has been photographing expensive items in neighbors' houses during his friendly visits. We found lists of targets in his handwriting, including estimated values and security system details. Thomas spread documents across Betty's dining room table. Patricia Mills has coordinated everything with the Chen family. They'll arrive Saturday afternoon with legitimate purchase paperwork, demonstrating the difference between real estate transactions and Jessica's fraud. What about the neighbors Jessica has scammed? I asked. Detective Williams has contacted all of Jessica's fake buyers. They'll be present Saturday as well, wanting their deposit money back. Jessica will be surrounded by angry victims demanding explanations she can't provide. Robert nodded. We've also been in touch with California authorities about outstanding warrants for Harold and Janet. They'll be extradited to face charges there after we finish with them here. Marcus looked around the table at all these people working to restore justice. I can't believe how many people Jessica hurt. Including you, I reminded him. Don't forget that you're a victim too. Patricia called while we were reviewing final details. David and Sarah Chen are excited about the house, she reported. They've been living in temporary housing since returning from Germany, and they love the neighborhood. If Desiree accepts their offer, they can close by next Friday. I thought about Frank and the dreams we had shared in that house. Selling felt like releasing the past, but staying meant living with constant reminders of Jessica's betrayal. Sometimes moving forward required leaving comfortable places behind. I'll accept their offer, I told Patricia. It's time for a fresh start. Marcus squeezed my hand. Where will you go? Betty and I have been talking about that retirement community near her house. It's got mountain views and a community garden. I could make new friends, try new activities, maybe even learn to paint like I always wanted to. Thomas smiled approvingly. That sounds perfect. And the proceeds from the house sale will ensure you're financially secure for the rest of your life. Detective Williams checked his watch. Saturday's plan starts at 2 o'clock. Jessica's party begins at 1, so she'll be in full hostess mode when we arrive. The neighborhood will see exactly who they've been defending. As everyone prepared to leave, Marcus pulled me aside. Mom, I'm going to divorce Jessica as soon as this is over. I know you probably think I should have seen through her lies earlier, but I want you to know I'm done being fooled. I hugged my son tightly. I'm proud of you for recognizing the truth. It takes courage to admit when we've been wrong. Will you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive, sweetheart. You loved someone who didn't deserve it. That makes you human, not foolish. Saturday morning couldn't come soon enough. Justice was finally within reach. Saturday afternoon arrived crisp and clear, perfect weather for Jessica's elaborate deception to unravel. From Betty's car across the street, I watched neighbors gathering in my front yard, carrying casserole dishes and congratulatory cards. Jessica had truly convinced the entire block that she and Marcus were the rightful owners celebrating their first home. Jessica stood on my front porch, wearing a flowing sundress, her hand resting dramatically on her supposedly pregnant belly. She greeted each neighbor with theatrical warmth, accepting their compliments on the beautiful family home with practiced humility. Such a sweet girl, I heard Mrs. Patterson from next door telling another neighbor, taking care of her elderly mother-in-law all this time, and now finally having her own space to start a family. Harold commanded attention near the garage, regaling a group of men with stories about the great deal he had negotiated for the property. He gestured expansively, describing his plans to renovate the kitchen and add a deck, as if he had invested his own money in improvements. Janet held court with the neighborhood women, displaying photo albums of their previous home in California and explaining how they had always dreamed of moving to Colorado. Her performance was flawless, the devoted grandmother excited to help with her first grandchild. At exactly 2:15, our convoy arrived. Patricia's silver SUV led the procession, followed by Thomas's sedan, Detective Williams's unmarked car, and finally David and Sarah Chen in their rental car. I rode with Thomas, my heart pounding with anticipation and nerves. Jessica's face drained of color as she recognized me stepping out of Thomas's car. She quickly composed herself and approached with arms spread wide, as if greeting a beloved family member. "Desiree! What a wonderful surprise! I'm so glad you could make it to our housewarming party." The neighbors watched with interest as Jessica embraced me. Her performance was remarkable. Anyone observing would think we were having a joyful reunion. "I brought some friends," I said calmly. "This is Patricia Mills, my real estate agent, and these are David and Sarah Chen. They're here for the house tour." Jessica's smile faltered for just a moment. "House tour? I'm not sure what you mean." Patricia stepped forward with professional confidence. "Miss Morrison, we spoke on the phone about showing the property to potential buyers. The owners are ready to accept offers." "The owners?" Jessica laughed nervously, loud enough for nearby neighbors to hear. "I think there's been some confusion. This is our home, we're not selling." Harold appeared at Jessica's shoulder, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. "What's this about selling? Nobody's selling anything. I bought this house fair and square." David Chen, tall and dignified in his military dress uniform, introduced himself politely. "Sir, there seems to be a misunderstanding. We've reviewed the property records, and Mrs. Desiree Williams is listed as the sole owner. We're here to finalize a purchase agreement with her." The neighbors began murmuring among themselves. Jessica's carefully constructed narrative was developing cracks. "That's impossible," Janet declared, abandoning her sweet grandmother act. "Show them the paperwork, Jessica. Tell them about the gift deed." Thomas stepped forward, his lawyer's briefcase in hand. "I'd be happy to review any documentation you might have. I represent Mrs. Williams in all property matters." Jessica's eyes darted frantically between Thomas and the growing crowd of neighbors. "This is ridiculous. Marcus can explain everything when he gets home from work." "Actually," Marcus said, stepping out from behind Thomas's car, "I'm here now." The shock on Jessica's face was complete. She had orchestrated this entire performance, believing Marcus was safely away at a construction site. "Marcus, what are you doing here? I told you not to come home until tomorrow." Marcus looked around at the assembled neighbors, many of whom he had known for years. "I'm here because I discovered the truth about what you've been doing, Jessica. These people deserve to know they've been lied to." Harold stepped aggressively toward Marcus. "You better watch your mouth, boy. Your wife has been nothing but good to your confused old mother." Detective Williams chose that moment to reveal his badge and step between Harold and Marcus. "Harold Morrison, you're under arrest for burglary, fraud, and identity theft." The gasps from the neighbors were audible. Mrs. Patterson dropped her casserole dish, sending green bean casserole across my driveway. "This is harassment!" Janet shrieked. "We're the victims here. That old woman is trying to steal our house." Detective Williams continued reading Harold his rights while producing handcuffs. "Janet Morrison, you're also under arrest for mail theft, fraud, and conspiracy." As Harold and Janet were being handcuffed, Patricia calmly addressed the stunned neighbors. "For those who are confused, Mrs. Williams has owned this property for 5 years. The Morrison family has been illegally occupying her home while attempting to forge ownership documents." Thomas opened his briefcase and pulled out official paperwork. "I have court documents proving continuous ownership, as well as evidence of document forgery and identity theft committed by the Morrison family." Jessica made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. "You're all making a terrible mistake. Ask anyone here. They'll tell you this has been our home for months." I'm pregnant with Marcus's child. You can't throw an expectant mother out on the street. Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying across the entire gathering. Jessica isn't pregnant. I found the negative pregnancy test she tried to hide. And she's stolen $18,000 from our joint savings account. He turned to address the neighbors directly. My mother never gave us this house. Jessica and her parents forged documents to make it look like she did. They convinced me my own mother was lying to me, and I was stupid enough to believe them. The neighborhood began to understand the scope of the deception. People who had brought gifts and congratulations now looked at Jessica with horror. "Wait," called out Mr. Peterson from down the street. "If they're criminals, what about the money Jessica took from us for the house deposit?" Detective Williams looked up from securing Harold in his patrol car. "What money?" Patricia pulled out a folder. "Jessica has been running a side scam, collecting deposits from multiple families, claiming she could sell them the house. We've documented at least $25,000 in fraudulent transactions." More neighbors stepped forward, each with stories of Jessica's deception. The Chen family watched in amazement as the full criminal conspiracy unfolded before their eyes. "Jessica Morrison," Detective Williams announced, "you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, grand theft, and conspiracy." As the handcuffs closed around Jessica's wrists, she made one final desperate plea. "Marcus, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. You know I love you." Marcus met her eyes with sadness rather than anger. "I thought I knew you, Jessica, but everything about you was a lie." Sarah Chen approached me as the police cars departed. "Mrs. Williams, are you still interested in selling the house? Because after everything that's happened, we'd be honored to give it the love and respect it deserves." I looked at the house Frank and I had shared, now tainted with memories of betrayal and deception. "Yes, I think it's time for this home to shelter a family that will appreciate its true value." The neighbors began approaching me with apologies and embarrassed explanations. They had truly believed Jessica's performance and felt terrible about being deceived. "Don't feel bad," I told them. "She fooled everyone, including my own son. The important thing is that justice is being served." As the crowd dispersed and Patricia began paperwork with the Chen family, Marcus and I stood alone in the driveway. "Mom, how can you ever forgive me?" I took his hands in mine. "Because you chose truth over comfort when it mattered most. That takes real courage." The house that had been stolen from me was finally mine again, and in giving it to the Chen family, I was choosing my own future instead of letting it be chosen for me. 6 months later, I stood in the garden behind my new apartment at Mountain View Retirement Community, watching the sun set over the Colorado Rockies. The apartment was smaller than the house Frank and I had shared, but it was mine by choice rather than circumstance. The legal proceedings had moved swiftly once the evidence was compiled. Harold received 4 years in state prison for his burglary charges, plus additional time for outstanding warrants in California. Janet was sentenced to 3 years for mail theft and conspiracy. Jessica faced the harshest sentence, 7 years for fraud, forgery, and grand theft, with restitution orders for all the families she had scammed. Marcus visited every Sunday, often bringing his new girlfriend Claire, a nurse he had met at a grief counseling group. Claire was nothing like Jessica, honest, kind, and genuinely interested in becoming part of our family rather than replacing it. She had encouraged Marcus to attend therapy to understand how he had been manipulated, and the growth in my son was remarkable. "I used to think love meant believing everything someone told me," Marcus explained during one of our visits, "but Claire taught me that real love includes honesty, even when the truth is uncomfortable." The Chen family had transformed my old house into something beautiful. Sarah sent me photos of their renovations, fresh paint, a new garden, and a swing set in the backyard for their 2 children. They hosted neighborhood barbecues and holiday parties, bringing the community spirit back to a street that had been shaken by the Morrison family's crimes. Detective Williams had used our case as a training example for identifying elder abuse and property fraud. Martha, my former neighbor, had recovered all her stolen financial information and now served as a volunteer educator, helping other elderly residents recognize warning signs of manipulation. Thomas Wright continued handling my legal affairs and had become a dear friend. The proceeds from the house sale had been invested wisely, providing me with financial security I had never experienced. More importantly, the money represented freedom. the freedom to choose my own path forward. Mountain View offered everything I had missed during the chaos with Jessica: peace, community, and the chance to explore interests I had deferred while caring for Frank and managing household responsibilities. I had joined the photography club, learned to paint watercolors, and volunteered at the local animal shelter. My apartment overlooked a courtyard where residents gathered for morning coffee and evening card games. My new friends included a former teacher, a retired nurse, and a woman who had run her own business for 40 years. Their stories inspired me, and their friendship reminded me that life could begin again at any age. Patricia Mills stopped by occasionally with updates on the real estate market and stories about the Chen family's happiness in their new home. She had become something of a local hero for exposing the Morrison fraud, and her business thrived as a result. "You saved more than just your own house," she told me during one visit. "Your courage to fight back protected dozens of other potential victims." The most meaningful change was in my relationship with Marcus. The crisis had forced us to rebuild our connection on a foundation of honesty rather than obligation. We talked openly now, sharing thoughts and feelings we had previously kept private. He sought my advice on major decisions and genuinely valued my opinions. "Jessica tried to convince me that you were a burden," he said during one particularly emotional conversation. "But she was the burden. You're the strongest person I know." Betty visited frequently, and we often talked about how the experience had changed us both. She had seen me fight for justice instead of accepting victimization, and it had inspired her to make changes in her own life. She was taking art classes and considering moving to a retirement community herself. "Watching you stand up to those criminals reminded me that we're not helpless just because we're older," she said. "Age brings wisdom, not weakness." The Morrison case had attracted media attention, leading to invitations to speak at community organizations about elder abuse prevention. I discovered a talent for public speaking and found purpose in educating others about recognizing manipulation and protecting themselves from predators. During one presentation to a church group, an elderly man approached me afterward with tears in his eyes. "My daughter-in-law has been pressuring me to sign papers I don't understand," he said. "After hearing your story, I'm going to contact a lawyer before signing anything." These conversations reminded me daily that my experience with Jessica, while painful, had prepared me to help others avoid similar traps. One evening, as I sat in my garden watching Betty help her neighbor's granddaughter plant tomatoes, I reflected on everything I had learned. Jessica had tried to steal my home, but in fighting back, I had discovered inner strength I didn't know I possessed. Harold and Janet had attempted to isolate me from my son, but our relationship emerged stronger than ever. The Morrison family's greed had temporarily disrupted my life, but ultimately led me to a better life than I could have imagined. The house where Frank and I had been happy became the foundation for my independence. The betrayal that nearly destroyed my family ultimately healed old wounds and created new bonds. The criminals who saw me as an easy target discovered that underestimating older women is a dangerous mistake. I learned that true family doesn't demand you sacrifice your security for their comfort. Real love includes accountability, honest communication, and mutual respect. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them face the consequences of their choices, instead of enabling destructive behavior. Most importantly, I discovered that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and reclaim your power. Age doesn't make us victims. Experience makes us formidable opponents for those who would exploit kindness for weakness. The mountain sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, and I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast to Frank's memory and my own future. The woman who had been afraid to confront her daughter-in-law was gone, replaced by someone who understood that peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from knowing you can handle whatever challenges arise. Jessica had tried to write me out of my own story, but instead, she gave me the chance to write a better ending than I ever thought possible. Have you ever faced a situation where someone close to you betrayed your trust? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself when it mattered most? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories of courage and justice, and share this with anyone who might need inspiration to fight for what's rightfully theirs. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and write your own happy ending.